This is David Toulis, and I'm glad you're giving me just a minute of your time. We are at 92.7 Nuga Radio, and I'm holding in my formerly newsprint ink stained fingertips a letter from Lisbeth Hale. She is the Deputy General Counsel of the Department of Safety and Homeland Security. And in my hand is it's a document designed to put a sane man to sleep. It's called Certification of MCSAP Conformance, State Certification, Fiscal Year 2018. And what I have asked for from the good people in Nashville is the contract that the state has with the good people in Washington, the federal government, through its Department of Transportation. And it is the covenant and league, the alliance, if you will, between Nashville and Washington to have Nashville enforce federal law regarding transportation, regarding the use of the roadway. And what makes clear is that all THP enforcement, all highway patrol enforcement, and even delegated enforcement powers that go to cities and counties is pursuant, meaning it follows and obeys U.S. code, the federal code. And so what is unmistakable in this document is that it is entirely, whether it's roadblocks or traffic programs, traffic enforcement programs, or anything else, it is all upon transportation. And it's upon transportation because it's not upon you. Now, I say that under the presupposition here for the moment that you, my listener, are not involved in the shipping business. You're not involved in the cab business. You're not riding a wrecker truck, hauling a broken down car to a garage, maybe Christian Brothers Automotive. You're not involved in carrying logs on a pole truck. You are not an Uber driver, perhaps, or Lyft driver. You're not running a cab. You're not hauling 30 tons of cargo in a double trailer semi-tractor trailer. You're not doing those things, but you just are in a car and you're going from point A to point B. Maybe you're the mom taking your ill son to the hospital or to the doctor's office. He's not in school today, and you're hauling him to the family doctor, to the pediatrician. You're not involved in transportation. You're not being hired to do it. No one's paying you to carry him or any object from point A to point B. There's no bill of lading. In other words, there's no contract showing that you're involved in a commercial act, right? And so you are free to do that. Now, if you're doing that, why is it that you are subject to arrest by Mayor Andy Burke and his police department if you're in Chattanooga? Maybe for speeding, right? Maybe you ran a stop sign and you're facing arrest. How is that possible that you can be facing arrest when you're not involved in transportation? So what's happening here in Tennessee, as a federal case in Nashville is highlighting, is light on a widespread abuse. Now, there's a class action lawsuit granted by Judge Trauger in U.S. District Court, a class action status last week, that claims that the state's system of revocation of driver's licenses upon people who have unpaid court fines after year, unpaid after year, is just and true. The state says that it can revoke these driver's licenses, that there is a rational connection between a driver's license revocation and non-payment of debt. But the judge says not so quick, not so easy, and in a ruling that runs past 70 pages, there is very meaty and worthwhile discussion. But I have in my hand a non-certified copy of the memorandum, the agreement between the state of Tennessee and the U.S. government. And it's entirely, all the things that we see by way of enforcement, it is entirely intended to be upon transportation, upon the safe use of the roads, because in safe and enforceable, because those people using the roads in view of this law are making a profit. Okay, so you have capitalism, which is good and great and wonderful, and we're for it. We are the pro-capitalist station in Chattanooga, and I'm the biggest pro-government advocate that you can find anywhere. I believe in government. I'm very pro-government. I'm a classical liberal. However, I'm not for abusive government. I'm not for the abuse of government, abuse of the civil magistrate. This contract between David Perkey, the commissioner, and the federal government says that the state has designated the Highway Patrol as the lead state agency to administer the commercial vehicle safety plan throughout the state. There's a grant sought and the Commercial Vehicle Administration to perform defined functions under the agreement. The lead state agency has the legal authority, resources, and qualified personnel necessary to enforce the state's commercial motor carrier, driver, and highway hazardous materials safety laws, regulations, standard, and orders. So you see, this whole agreement is about commercial government and commercial travel. It's not about private travel, which is what you do, and which is what a man named Rudy Soto Rodriguez does. I'm holding up his picture. I want you to see a good man, okay? Here's a picture on Facebook of a good and innocent man. He's good and he's innocent, and he's a hardworking family man with 2 children, and his wife's name is Daisy. I met this sweet family yesterday after church. Intended to pay a quick call right on my way home from church at North Shore Fellowship to my house in Saudi Daisy. And I said, well, let's just drop by Rudy Soto Rodriguez. He's 32 years old, and he was arrested on March the 4th, and the charge is driving without a driver's license and speeding. He is an innocent person caught up in what I think some people would call it a scam. Some people would call it a combination. And what's remarkable is that the arresting agency has been notified by me, David Toulis. It has been notified by administrative notice that I have given to these relevant agencies that the law in Tennessee and all court cases describing the law until lately recognize a right of travel, a constitutionally protected, God-given, unalienable, and inherent right to travel by car or truck or motorbike by the means of your choice. On what? On the people's roads. But if you're involved in commerce, if you're making a living carrying goods or people for hire, that's not a right. That is absolutely not a right according to our law. It is a privilege, and you have to ask to be able to do it, and you have to pay to be able to do it, and you have to pay fees and be subject to enforcement actions. And you have to have a driver's license. You have to have insurance, right? And your vehicle has to be registered with the state as a motor vehicle. A motor vehicle, which of course means that you're involved in commerce by presumption. Presumptively, you are involved in commerce if you have a registration with the state as a motor vehicle, because motor vehicles are the things that are regulated, right? Motor vehicles are the means of commercial travel, and if you're involved in that, then you have to have your registration. So those are the 3 legs of commercial government. And trapped in the abuse of the law that creates that regulatory body is an innocent man, Rudy Soto Rodriguez. He is an innocent and good man. Okay, I want you to know right now, hire him if you need some work done on your house. He's a good man. He works in the contracting trades, and he is a victim. He is a victim of state government. He is a victim of Neil Pinkston, who will be prosecuting him. He is a victim of either the Chattanooga Police Department or the Sheriff's Department run by Jim Hammond, who is accountable to the people because he is elected. He represents the people, and he has not answered yet my questions. Now, on the 1st of March, just so you know, I gave Jim Hammond in a meeting a copy of my notice. And I said, Sheriff Hammond, I've got some questions for you about your practice in light of the law. And he refused to tell me what the practice is on how he arrests people and on what basis. He said he would get back to me through his LEO, his PIO, his public information officer, Matt Lee. And Matt and Sheriff Hammond has still not answered my questions. What do you do when you arrest people? And separately from my administrative notice, which is a mere 20 pages of legal review, I had a letter to Sheriff Hammond. And you can read that letter at yournews.com. That's yournews.com. Just do a find on Hammond in the window, and the article will pop up there. Actually, there are 2. One is a letter to Hammond, and then the other is a letter to Matt Lee with the 7 questions I'm asking. And I do propose a remedy for this, a local economy solution to a state abuse, an abuse allowed by Nashville, created by Nashville as a kind of fraud against the people, and accepted by Mayor Andy Burke. Mayor Andy Burke has apparently not done anything about this, though Wade Hinton and all the members of the city council have been notified. They have been notified about the limits on the law. And that's what I've done here. David Toole is your host, thinking about you, thinking about your sons and your daughters. They're 15 years old. Are they going to get driver's licenses? Well, maybe they will for convenience, but they don't have to have it to be on the road. They don't have to have it to be on the road. Though I suggest that if you do intend to allow them to be on the road, apart from that they be properly trained. Though Hammond's driving school will not train anybody who doesn't have a license. I mean, Hammond's is part of the establishment narrative very clearly. But I do want you to know that I did get back from the Department of Homeland Security this letter and the covenant between Nashville and Washington, stating that Nashville will enforce the commercial driver's license code pursuant to federal law. And so that means if Mayor Burke or Sheriff Hammond are enforcing the law outside the scope of state law and federal law, that they are in violation of federal law. And I've pointed that out in my notice, just so you know, the notice, which you can read at Nuganomics.com. You can also read a copy at yournews.com. The notice gives the warnings at the end of what laws apply, including the federal oppression statute, which is 49 USC 1983, I think it is. That's mentioned as well as in the areas of things to watch out for. And the reason I think this is important is because this is a local economy project. It is a project of local economy because it puts the local officer makes him personally liable for abuses under this law. And I would like to suggest, as I wait to get the open records request response on the video of Rudy's arrest, that officer is personally liable to Rudy Soto Rodriguez because his department has been notified, and he cannot escape the personal responsibility of acting against the interests of this private person using the road. So we have a case here that's going to be prosecuted by Neil Pinkston, and the officer is next on the line. It's always the officer's neck that's in view, since the state itself rejects the distinction between travel and transportation. And Neil Pinkston indicates that he does too, through spokeswoman Melidia Kluwel in correspondence with me, in which I quote him from her mouth, since she is the spokeswoman. I quote him as having said all these things in her letter. That hasn't come out yet at Nuganomics.com or yournews.com, but I'm planning on getting it out soon, maybe in God's providence this week. In Nashville, the two plaintiffs are very poor men. One is James Thomas, 48, charged with a criminal trespass. He had taken shelter under a bridge during a rain, and he was homeless, and he pleaded guilty. He was given a 30-day suspended sentence and assessed $289.70 in court costs. And 3 years later, when he has tried to apply for a driver's license, he found that it had been revoked for unpaid costs. And David Perkey, the commissioner, admits that this homeless man lives on a very limited subsistence income for people who are totally and permanently disabled and cannot afford to pay the $289 in court debt, nor the $65 reinstatement fee to regain his privilege. And Perkey admits that this poor man did not get the correspondence saying that his driver's license, the privilege, was revoked. And the other plaintiff is named David Hickson. He's 50. His driver's license was revoked in 2014 for failure to pay court costs. The number is 800-8949. If you have a story, I do want to hear from you. Or if you want to make praises and hallelujahs for police officers and sheriff's deputies, please feel free to call as well. If I can't get to my points today, well, guess what? There's always tomorrow. This is David Toulis, and we are looking at a very important case out of Nashville in federal court, and that is a case showing that 140,000 Tennesseans, including thousands and thousands in the Chattanooga area, have had their licenses revoked in a violation of due process rights, a violation of 42 USC 1983, which is the federal oppression statute. They're being oppressed by state government, not by accident, but by policy. And a federal judge has taken great interest in their plight. Great interest. The ruling coming down last week at more than 70 pages. I did not even get to finish the reading of it, but I do plan by God's good grace to get details out on yournews.com. That's yournews.com. The number is 800-8949, 800-8949. And here's another detail about David Perkey, the Commissioner of Safety, from the Republican governor Bill Haslam. Right, Bill Haslam, a Republican, is just like all the rest. When it comes to the state and the deep state, these people are identical. Democrat and Republican, it doesn't matter. Their operation, that ministry of the good people, if you will, in Nashville, is like one and like the other. There's no real distinction in the persistent hum, the persistent drone, if you will, of the bureaucratic machine that operates against the people's interests in administrative law, regardless of whom is elected. And the slight is this: not too long ago, I made an open records request for all policies in the Department of Safety which allow the commissioner to give a driver's license to someone apart from that person's signed application. And it took 1,000% longer than the statute required to get the answer in the first iteration of that request. I think there were two. And what I was trying to find out is how can you revoke and suspend somebody's license if that person never made application? How do you do that? What is the basis of that kind of activity? But the David Perkey in either interviews on the record before under sworn depositions or in open court testified that here is the process that the department does to create a driver's license apart from anybody's personal application for same and then revoke it, right? To be able to charge someone with driving on a revoked license, they had to first have had one, right? Well, how do you get a license? Well, you have to apply for it. You have to fill out the form, pay the fee. And then if you do something wrong in transportation, well, then your license gets revoked. Well, here, these homeless people have driver's licenses created for them. And the same day, according to Judge Trauger, the same day, David Perkey, the Tennessee Commissioner of Safety, revokes it. So now he can charge someone with driving unrevoked who didn't have one before. They had one before because he gave them one administratively by administrative fiat, administrative action ex nihilo, that is to say in Latin, action from nothing, an action that has no basis in law, coming from nothing, from their own whim, giving someone a license apart from his application, and then revoking it so that if that person uses the road, we can charge him with a crime, which is to say driving on a revoked license or driving without a license. And this is like buggery, okay? This is administrative buggery of the worst kind. It's called pegging, okay? This is administrative pegging, if you will. If you want to get really graphic about it, look it up. And which is something that I learned about from Sex Week, right? I'm reading about Sex Week at UT. I learned about that. And what we have with David Perkey and Governor Bill Haslam, a Republican, is this very thing. You know, Republicans are no better than Democrats. They both do the same thing. It's chicanery. So here now, what are they going to do with Rudy Soto Rodriguez, an innocent man, a working man in the building trades who has been charged with driving without a driver's license? He never had one. So how can you charge someone who didn't have one under a statute that makes it a penalty, makes it an offense to not have one if you have one, right? It's called the Exhibit on Demand statute. And I'll have to look at his paperwork to see if that was the charge. But he's an abused man. And there are many people like him who are Hispanic, who are poor, and in the category of people that God himself says require special protection. That will be the alien. That will be the orphan and the widow and the poor. Those are four categories of people in Tennessee that God's law, God's holy word, requires to be protected. And here, the civil magistrate, through his David Perkey's, his Governor Haslam's, and his administrations, are harassing and hounding innocent people. and giving them effectively a civil death sentence. Is that right? Where is the Christian church on these questions? That's what I want to know. Where are Christian people on these kinds of issues? These are grievous. These are sins done by the magistrate against the poor. Should there not be an outcry? Should there not be a protest? Should there not be a demonstration? Will not people be angry at this kind of
bias in public schools? So I decided to homeschool my kids. The problem was,
it makes me hurt. It makes me frustrated. What can we do to help? That's my question when I met Rudy Soto Rodriguez yesterday. Rudy, what can I do to help you? What can I do to help you? That's what I want to do as a Christian. And that's what I want to do here. David Toulis, the blogger with the biggest pen. Bowtie. What does Bowtie say? Tune in tomorrow.
Nuga Radio. 3, 2,